Well, hey, LTD family, I'm so excited to welcome you back for another episode of the LTD Leadership Lean In, our podcast all about leadership, change, and personal growth, where our goal is to help you lead like never before in your hotel and in your home. I'm Sam Bean, your host, VP of Sales and LTD Culture Champion.
And I'm Richard Murphy, and I'm wearing a vest today.
Yes, you are. You look very spiffy.
Thank you.
You know, Richard, when it comes to life and leadership, one of the wisest pieces of advice I have ever received was you have to start with yourself. And it actually reminds me of a story. So not too long ago, I was actually at a conference, leading a conference out west. And a young man, he'd been listening to me all day, right? And he said, hey, I love this leadership stuff, right? And I've decided that I want to be a leader. And then he looked at me and he said, Sam, here's the question. Who do I start leading? And what he was really saying is, I'm young and I don't really have any direct reports. I don't have a title. And, my first initial thought was, well, it's pretty easy to answer that question. The first person you start leading is yourself, right? We actually start with our own selves when we start in our leadership journey.
Yeah, I think that we talked about that in the first podcast.
Correct, yes.
Last week, about the whole compass goes, and the most important part is starting with yourself. That's where we lead from example. That's where we go through everything, but it really does, you have to be able to lead yourself before anything else. So today we're talking about why looking at ourselves is where we start with leadership and exactly how to do it. And then, like we have the plan. We're excited for this format of where we learn the first episode, and then we talk about it in a couple weeks. So on the 15th, we'll have a special guest.
Ooh, I wonder who it is.
To be determined?
Yes.
Or do you know?
TBD. I don't know.
Oh, well, exciting.
We got to get him penciled in.
Oh, to him.
Yes. Oh, sorry, I let it out.
All right. And so pay attention today, take those lessons home, and then don't forget about our downloadable leadership guide that'll come with this. So starting with your self-leadership.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that leadership guide, I think, is going to be really important to make sure that you can apply all of these lessons that we learned. You have an opportunity to take notes there. And I really think that you can use it with your teams and continue this conversation. It shouldn't just stop at the first of the month. We really want this to be a continued conversation throughout the hotel and throughout the month. So let's go ahead. Let's jump right in. So we determined last month, right, on our first podcast, that leadership is influence, right? Nothing more, nothing less. And it's not a role and it's not a title. And we explained that leadership is where we're given the privilege of having a voice. And again, in our families and our friendships here at LTD, wherever you have a voice, and wherever you can influence perspective, you are in fact leading. But just like you mentioned before, Richard, the truth is, before you can actually become a leader that others love to follow, you have to learn to lead yourself. And while it may be a hard truth to realize, one of your greatest leadership challenges is probably the person staring at you in the mirror, right? Because the common denominator in every good and every bad decision that you have ever made, so every leadership decision, relationship decision, parenting decision, business decision, financial decision, really just to name a few, right, is you. Now, fortunately, there are some steps that you can take to learn to lead yourself well, to build new habits and to break some bad ones, right, as you become a leader worth following. Because, believe it or not, self-leadership is your primary responsibility as a leader. And great leaders, they don't just lead other people. Great leaders have learned how to lead themselves. And in fact, your potential, right, your potential to lead others is a direct result of how you lead yourself. So to gain respect, you have to do more than just teach something well. You really need to learn to model it well. So whether or not someone wants to follow you has so really far less to do with what you say than how you lead yourself. So why does this matter so much, Richard?
Well, I mean, it's the foundation of any sort of leading is going to be yourself first. And that's not just, it's not just what you have to do to get there,
Mhm.
but you have to do that first before you'll even gain people's confidence,
Right.
belief, integrity, all that stuff you have to prove through your actions and what
Right.
you're doing in it. And, new leaders often struggle in how to get somebody to pay attention to them, right? How do I get them to do what I say
Mhm.
other than just falling on that title? And it's really by emulating that behavior, by doing it. We can also fall into these things where we say, hey, this is how it's done. I know I don't do it this way, but you need to do it.
Yeah.
But the whole do as I say, not as I do does not work ever. They're going to do what you do and not listen to what you say.
Yeah. Everyone has probably heard their parents say that a time or two. And generally you just kind of did what they did anyway, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a really, really great point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So exceptional self-leadership, right? It's the key to both sustained influence and sustained performance. And the key word there is sustain. We can do a lot of things in the short term, but if we really want to create a sustainable path of successful leadership, it's really important, again, that we hone in these self-leadership skills. So ultimately, our goal should be to become someone who seeks influence over authority. I'm going to say that again because I think it's kind of important. We're going to seek influence over authority. Influence will always take you further with your team than authority will. People rarely open up to the influence of someone that they don't respect. So if we grow in our self-leadership, right, and we become someone people respect rather than someone they submit to, we'll be so much more successful in our leadership journey.
Well, that sounds great. But how do I lead myself?
Yeah. I mean, again, we're trying to bring this from theory to application, right? So we're talking about this and theoretically all of this sounds great. It's like, okay, well, this all sounds good, but how do I actually do the thing you're talking about, right? So it can be a hard lesson for some, but truthfully, again, the potential of your leadership is a direct reflection of the habits that you have. Okay, so your personal habits. You are what you repeatedly do. And this is also true of your team. So as an example, right, if you lead with intensity, oftentimes, most of the time, your team will work with intensity. And if you don't value things like excellence, probably your team will also reflect that as well. So in other words, your habits matter more than you can imagine. So, Richard, I'm curious, have you ever, started a New Year's resolution or, tried to start a new habit and maybe it didn't stick? Has that ever happened to you?
No, never.
No?
Pretty great.
You're very self-disciplined, huh?
No, not at all. So, yeah, of course. I think we all have our standards. I want to be healthier. I want to be better. Anytime we struggle to accomplish anything, we're just a little self-loathing. I think, all right, you know what, I'm going to. And I would say typically the standard, I want to be more fit. I want to work out routinely, want to exercise. I want to eat better. I mean, really any of those things where I'm looking at the mirror and not really seeing what I want to see at that moment. I think, let me do something about this.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you talk about all of these things, these personal habits, but of course, these are leadership things too, timeliness, right? Self-discipline with, our time management, all of these different things that it's all relevant there. So, when we're talking about creating habits that actually stick, okay, there's a few ways that we can actually work to create habits that stick. So when we talk about those dreaded New Year's resolutions, right? How do you actually create something that will stick and that you can sustain over a long period of time? So first of all, the first reason why oftentimes they're not sticking realistically, it's because we're focusing on the what, but we don't understand the how, right? So we're focusing on the what. I want to lose 10 pounds. but we haven't determined how we're actually going to do that, right? So many leaders, we spend way too much time focusing on the goal, but not on how we're actually going to achieve the goal. So I'm going to reference this author multiple times throughout this podcast. He's kind of like my author crush. I don't know what you want to call it, but his name is James Clear, and he wrote a book called Atomic Habits, and I would recommend it to any of you guys. But James Clear is quoted as saying, "Goals don't determine success. Systems determine success." And as a leader, don't think about changing the result. Focus on changing the systems that produce the results.
Yeah, I think whenever we're trying to accomplish anything and we focus on where we're trying to get, we never get started. And I think that's probably really the hardest part is getting started. And if you don't ever know where it's at, then obviously you've never formed a plan. And obviously if you had a plan, then you have some place to go with it. And obviously every plan has a beginning so that I would be able to start.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's really understanding those systems and identifying what is the process by which I'm going to get to my desired outcome, right? So the second reason why a lot of times these new habits, they don't stick, it's oftentimes, right, because we don't see progress fast enough. We've all seen it, in a lot of people's journeys. If we're not seeing progress fast enough, then oftentimes we may just quit, or we stop doing what we had originally intended, right? And very rarely do leaders see immediate results when starting a good habit. It's just the way it is. Yeah. So like looking in the mirror, right? Just thinking out loud here. So let's just say we've been talking about health a lot, right? So if you're, let's say you've established that you have a weight loss goal, this is their New Year's resolution, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. You established your plan, but you're not seeing results fast enough.
Yeah, I think that really whenever we are rolling that, you put in an effort, and we are used to seeing something come out of any effort we make. And I do want to immediately go to the gym, eat healthy for one day, and then come back and be able to look and be like, or is this, no, that's still my same stomach I started today with. Yeah,
no, again, not seeing results fast enough. That's another reason why a lot of times these habits, they're just not sticking like we would have wanted to. And the last reason that a lot of times our habits won't stick when we start them is because of our own negative self-perception. And a lot of times our own negative self-talk or self-perception will sabotage our own success. It's the stories we tell ourselves. And, that can be a really important component of being successful in establishing a new habit and really making it stick. So, Richard, just out of curiosity, what do you think is the biggest driving force that actually shapes your personal habits?
I think, it's really who I surround myself with, my friends, coworkers, where I spend my time. I emulate their behaviors. I see what they're doing. Where I work, or where I put myself every day, whether it's at my actual job or the mindset that I go into it with every day, where I go after work. So really any place I'm at. And really just, I guess, what I already think of the situation before I get in it could affect if I'm going to actually accomplish it. If I think that it's impossible to accomplish this, then I'm probably never going to keep up with the habit. Yeah, that's a really great point.
But I'm here to tell you, right, that the biggest force that actually shapes your habits is what you think of you, right? So what you think of you. So just think about this, right? So anytime you face any situations, your mind subconsciously asks these, questions, right? It's going to ask, what kind of situation is this? What kind of person am I? And what does a person like me do in a situation like this? Right? So what kind of situation is this? What kind of person am I? And what does a person like me do in a situation like this? So I'm just gonna kind of throw out an example there. Richard, we've talked about that, the health thing. Let's just stay on this track because it's a relatable one, I think, for a lot of people, right? So as an example, let's say a situation is there's a birthday in the office and we've ordered cake and cookies to celebrate for this person's birthday. Now you've already established, right, that you have a weight loss goal and you want to lose some weight. Okay, so that's your goal, and you've instituted some new habits, right, to help you achieve this new goal. Now, when you encounter this situation of cake and cookie time, right, the first thing you're thinking is, okay, what kind of situation is this? It's a dangerous one. It's a tough one where I'm going to have to make some decisions, right? But then the next question you ask yourself is, well, what kind of person am I? Well, I have already decided that I'm a healthy person. I'm a person who, is really trying to meet this goal. And I'm a healthy person who wants to lose these 10 pounds, right? And what does a person like me do in a situation like this? Well, a person like me, a healthy person, right? In a situation like this, where there's an opportunity to maybe indulge, they might make a different decision, right? They might ask, oh, is there an alternative? Is there a fruit option? Is there something else? Or maybe they just abstain from the thing, right? So that's what we're talking about, right? What you think of you is going to help determine the decisions you make. Because you are thinking of yourself as a healthy person, it helped guide your decision-making process, right? And to opt to not go for the cake and the cookies and to go for the fruit option instead. So that's just kind of an example of what that is. And
that example makes me very hungry right now.
Are you hungry now? Do you want the cake and cookies or do you want the fruit?
Right now?
Yeah. Oh, no, we need to change your identity. Oh, man. Okay. So James Clear,
your boy,
my favorite. Okay. He says, every action that you take is a vote towards the type of person you wish to become. No single instance will transform your beliefs, but as the votes build up, so does the evidence of your new identity, right? So, Richard, on that thought, what are some leadership, insecurities that you have struggled with, or maybe that you've seen in other people?
I think from the beginning or even ongoing, it could be, typical leadership. They're worried about recognizing talent, making sure that they're getting everything accomplished, maybe worried that they are not disciplined enough and being able to, or organized, right? Discipline, organized, hand in hand.
Yeah.
Can't really emulate the behavior that they want to, and they feel that they're a bad example.
Mm-hmm.
Or they might just be struggling with having those difficult conversations with somebody, though ones where you're trying to give them that constructive feedback and tell them what somebody's doing wrong can always be a difficult thing to accomplish. In your personal life, maybe you just struggle with managing finances already, and so then you're thinking, if I can't control my personal life, how can I do that as a leader?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, right? Because when you're struggling in those with that identity, you might, if someone always told you since you were young, right? Oh, you're bad with numbers, you're bad with finances or something, you might just be like, well, I'm not good at this anyway, so I might as well, keep swiping that card. I don't know. So, our identity really does shape our actions. And so what I want us to do, instead of setting these outcome goals like lose 10 pounds, okay? So let's think of it in a different way. Instead of focusing on the what, we want to focus on the who you want to become, right? So in other words, let's start with the who before the do. That sounds like Dr. Seuss. does. But hey, it's catchy and you might remember it. So let's start with the who before the do. So
Do commercial.
yes, something like that. Yeah, do the do. Is that it?
The who before the do.
Okay.
Drink Mountain Dew.
But probably not if we want to create healthy habits.
Yeah, good point.
I don't know.
Sorry.
That's okay. So you might, right, Richard, you might want to become a leader who loves people, right? Or a leader who develops other leaders, or a leader who's known for your integrity, or a leader who gets results, right? Or a leader who's disciplined that people admire and respect. And again, like you were referencing, you might even want to take it beyond leadership, right? And say, that you really want to become a person who's a faithful friend or a healthy person, right? So when you do this, you will actually you'll notice you'll start to live a much healthier cycle where your identity starts to create a positive habit. And then that positive habit will actually start to reinforce the positive or the healthy identity. And so, Richard, you got your pen and paper here,
I do.
right? Hopefully our people out there in podcast land have a pen and paper. If they don't, because they're driving or they're at the gym or whatever, maybe they'll download their leadership guide after the fact and go through this exercise with us. But what I want us to do is take a few seconds and I want us to answer this question. So who do you want to become as a leader? Who do you want to become as a leader? And I want you to do this by creating what I'm going to refer to as an I am statement. An I am statement. So as you're thinking on yours, I'm going to just give our friends here a few examples or some ideas.
Thank you.
So maybe you say something like this. I am a leader who trusts, empowers, and creates leaders. Or I am a leader who is disciplined. I choose what I want most over what I want now. That's my favorite. I am a faith-filled, bold, risk-taking leader, right? So those are some examples of some leadership I am statements.
Gotcha. So I would say what I think I already am, or it's kind of like I make that statement of what I want to become, but it's put it out in the universe.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
That's exactly right. You're putting it
So-
out in the universe.
So if my concern was I wanted to be a leader that people believe in or people trust or is inspiring and not just scared of, I would say that I am a leader. You already used it, inspire. I am a leader who motivates
Yeah.
and encourages.
I love that.
And I guess I should do two, huh?
Yeah, I think 2 is good.
I am a leader who is trustworthy and patient.
Ooh. Patience. That's a good one.
Thank you.
Okay. So hold on to those leadership I am statements because we're gonna circle back to this here in just a second. But now that we understand sort of the why behind why it's super hard to stick to these goals that we establish, right? Like our New Year's resolutions or whatever, I want to talk about 3 ways that we can actually create habits that stick. And again, we're trying to make this very practical, something that you can take back and really apply. So the deal is if you want to change your life, Richard, and you're going to have to change your habits. Sorry, it's just the truth. So according to a Duke study, 40% of the actions that you do every single day are the result of your habits, not your decisions. So if you want to change your impact and you need to change your habits, okay? So the fastest way to do big things is to constantly do the small right things. So I'm sure you've heard it said before. It's an age-old quote, but successful people do consistently what other people do occasionally. So which habit should you start, right? That's what we're thinking. What habit do you start? Where do I even start? So just like we discussed, we have to think about our who goals. That's where we're going to start. And these goals are going to help us answer, right, the who do I want to become? And when you know who you want to become, it's so much easier to know what habits you need to start, right? So let's go ahead. We're going to ask ourselves this question, and we're going to write this down right under your leadership I am statements. Okay. You're going to write down, you're gonna say under your I do statement, what is the one habit that you need to create, okay, to reinforce who you want to become? What's the one habit that you need to create or really start up to really reinforce who it is that you want to become? So just like as an example, if you're an organized leader, right? I am an organized leader,
Okay.
right? You might say, I write out my to-do list the night before each workday. Okay, so that's just an example. So any thoughts or ideas on some habits that you would start to help reinforce some of these leadership I am statements?
Yeah. So for my first one, I said, I am a leader who motivates and encourages, right? And that's, and I think that was a pretty bland statement. Now that I'm trying to form a habit around it, but how do I motivate? And
Correct.
so if I hold meetings regularly, which obviously I should if
Yeah.
I'm leading,
Yeah.
then I make sure that all of those meetings are motivational and encouraging, and we
Mhm.
focus on how we're going to get to our next goals. And so I need to set those as a routine
Yep.
that I'm holding these meetings, and then I make sure that regardless of the situation, I'm keeping them positive and encouraging and not focusing on negative.
Yeah. Or as a thought, you know, again, you're saying you want to be a leader who motivates and encourages. Well, maybe you set a habit of, I want to send at least one positive text or email or handwritten note. Let's get real fancy every single week or every single day, whatever it is you think you can truly manage. But if you recognize, right, but that one of your associates is going above and beyond, you're setting an intention, right, that you are going out of your way to recognize them, right? And so at the end of the week, you can measure your success. I said I was going to send at least 3 encouraging texts this week or 3 encouraging handwritten notes this week. Did I do what I said I was going to do?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm updating my answer on my paper.
Okay.
Thank you.
But again, you want to make it tactical. And we're going to talk about some other things, right? So when we're doing this, we talked about, you know, you heard me just say when you determine, if you were to have said, for example, I'm going to send a handwritten note every single day. Well, do you really think you could do that?
Send a handwritten note every day?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big ask, especially if you've never even written a handwritten note ever.
Yeah, I'd probably like, yeah, I could do that, but you know, am I going to come up with something creative that like it'll be easy for the first 2 days?
Exactly.
Then I'll lose my.
So one of the first ways that you can really create a habit that sticks is to make it small, right? So too often leaders think that they have to build this super massive, big, super habit, right, to become the leader that they want to become. But that's actually not true. It's better if your new habit is a small habit. So I'm going to paraphrase Newton's law of motion. Okay, because I'm very smart. An object at rest tends to stay at rest, and an object in motion tends to stay in motion. And so our habits are actually the same way. A small habit is so much easier to put into motion than this big super habit. Okay, so when you're choosing one of these habits that reinforce this leadership I am statement, you need to really make sure that it's a small one, because if you start too big, the likelihood of you being able to continue on and carry that out it's just less. It's just probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I think you know, a few examples of small habits that I could start by is never hitting the snooze button when we wake up, right?
There you go.
I think that we can carry that all the way around. I'm not going to be able to immediately say that I'm going to run a mile every day, but maybe I'll just get up every so often even in the middle of talking and walk around the room.
There
So
you
that I can
go.
make sure that we keep that going. All right, that was a little bit of exercise.
There
I'll
you
set
go.
that routine.
Good job.
Maybe I'll start with, as we were talking about earlier, the notes. Maybe if I don't think that I can really do it every day, I'll start with at least one a week,
There
right?
you go.
And then I can add on to that as I start to get better at it.
That's perfect. Those are great things to implement, and they're nice and they're small enough that you can actually fulfill them and keep them on track. So the next thing you want to do after you make it small is you got to make it obvious. So if you want to change what you do or how you lead, right, you have to change what you see.
Okay. So if that was the case, if I wanted to start taking vitamins,
Yes,
then I have to remember and build that routine, right?
correct.
So I will make sure that I see them.
Mhm.
So maybe I put them in where I first wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
or somewhere that I'm gonna brush my teeth every morning.
Right.
Maybe I'll put the vitamins right next to my toothbrush.
Make it obvious.
All right.
Yeah.
Or if I'm trying to read more, then
Mhm.
maybe I will keep my book on top of my remote control for the TV, so that I have to physically
Smart.
make the decision to not read that book when I move it off of
you
the
gotta
remote.
pick it up. No, that's really good. I'm just trying to think. We talked about, the notes. Maybe you have a stack of thank you notes on your desk and they just kind of sit there right in front of your face. So you're having to literally think like, I'm not going to do it. Like, it would be hard to make the decision to not do it.
Yeah.
Or maybe even if you decide, okay, I'm handwritten notes, my handwriting's atrocious. Nobody, it's easier for me to start with text messages. Maybe you like block time in your calendar and you make it as a reminder, send, it's okay. That's okay. Send, 2 or 3 messages. I've been known to do that with my loved ones. Like, I'll schedule it in so I don't forget. It's not that I don't love them, but we get busy. So don't be ashamed to schedule it in. Say, I'm gonna text my husband at least one time today, right?
Nice.
I mean, again, you're making it obvious, and that's really the key. If that's something that you really want to start trying to implement. And then last but not least, you're gonna want to make it automatic. So we live so much of our life in autopilot, right? And here's the problem with that. Without intentionality, what's automatic is so rarely what's most productive. It's just the truth of it, right? And we don't drift towards what's healthy. We drift towards what's easy. And excellence is never an accident. And excellence is always the result of intentional and consistent habits. And so to make one of your habits for this new season, right, automatic, we have to decide when.
Mhm.
When are we going to do it? So let's pick up that pen again, right? And we're going to put this into practice. So I want you to fill in this statement. You're going to think, after I blank, I will do blank.
Okay.
Okay, so after I blank, I will do blank. And this is what we're going to try to make this automatic.
Mhm.
The technical term for this is called habit stacking. But we're not going to worry about that. It is a real thing though. So you're going to try to make this automatic by filling in this statement. So do you have any ideas on yours, Richard?
Yeah, because I'm gonna steal one that I already said.
Okay, I like it.
So after I brush my teeth, because I'm very good at brushing my teeth.
Good. We've established that habit.
My dentist would be proud.
Thank you.
I will take my vitamins.
Perfect.
Automatic, adding that to the habit.
Yeah.
Or normally my first thing when I get home to decompress is turn on the TV and sit down for a little bit. So
Yeah.
I'll say, after I arrive home
Mhm.
and change from my work clothes to my casual clothes,
Mhm.
first thing I'll do is, if my goal is to read more, then I will read then. It's
Perfect.
part of I'm getting changed from my work clothes to casual clothes.
Yep.
After I get changed, I'll read.
Good job.
Or we talked about the meetings and getting more out of any lessons that we get from these and being inspired,
Yeah.
but it's forgetting about it when it's time to actually implement it.
Mhm.
That I will, as soon as a meeting is over or any sort of enrichment activity we go through is over,
Yeah.
I will put, I'll write down, I will write down those
Mm.
3 actions, those 3 priorities, those 3 goals that I want to accomplish after it,
That's
and then
so
set the task then.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I know for any of you all who have to sit in meetings, it could really be very frustrating when you're spending so much time and you're like, I don't know if I got anything out of that. And that's a great way, Richard, to at least feel like you're optimizing your time and to build a super great habit of optimizing the time that you're investing in these meetings. So that's a really good one.
Yeah, and I think that we really need to start with keeping it small
Yep.
to add into these habits, because it's much easier to keep those small habits than it
Yes.
would be to get big, obtainable goals out of
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's perfect. So really it's time to start rethinking how we're defining success. And that does require quite a mindset shift. And I know, okay, so obviously, I'm in sales, so I like to get to the big goal, right? That's just my nature. So it's really taken some time for me to reevaluate or readjust how I'm defining success. And oftentimes we're not defining ourselves as successful until we've accomplished the big goal, right? But what we are trying to encourage you to do is really, instead of waiting to view yourself as successful when you finally hit that goal, we really want to start viewing ourselves as successful when we practice the right habits today, right? So when you complete those 2 or 3 things today, you've won the day. And if you can win the day 5 days a week or 80% of the time, then guess what? The likelihood of you eventually meeting that big goal, it just goes up tremendously. And that's really what we're trying to encourage you guys to learn today. So like we said before, the potential of your leadership really is a reflection of the quality of your habits. Now, that's super good news if you have great habits, right? But it can be bad news if you have some bad habits, okay? So now that we know how to start a new habit, let's talk a little bit about how do we go about breaking a bad habit. So just a second ago, we asked this question. We said, based on who you want to become, what's one habit you want to start, right? Now we're going to ask a similar question. Based on who you want to become as a leader, what's one bad habit that you need to break? So what's a bad habit that you need to break? Now, when determining what our bad habits might be, it's very important that we're very specific and that we name it, right? That we name it. And why is that? It's because you cannot defeat what you do not define. You cannot defeat what you do not define. And that can be really uncomfortable for a lot of us, because being self-aware and reflecting on ourselves and calling out some of these maybe not so good habits, it can be uncomfortable, and it can sort of put us in maybe not so good of a light, or but it's still very important that we are self-aware, and that we do reflect on ourselves, and that we are specific, and that we clearly define what some of these bad habits are.
Yeah, so my examples would be of bad habits, maybe personally, or going on this healthy kick, right? Is making poor decisions of what I eat, right? Or maybe even just spending free time that I could be on exercising, lounging on the couch in whatever manner that is.
Sure.
And then maybe on a more personal or professional nature, it's more of the procrastination is a big thing, right?
Sure.
We can always put it off. We can always do it later. But as you said, I need to be more specific. I need to look at, well, what am I procrastinating with? So if it's new goals implemented by the hotel,
Yep.
or if it is completing some sort of assignment that I need to do every week, and then figuring out exactly how to break that habit with those.
Yeah. Yeah. I know for me, one that has been a constant bad habit for me, it kind of falls in line, right, with the procrastination piece, is breaking this sort of bad habit of putting off difficult conversations. Right? Things that I know are going to be uncomfortable, maybe delivering some constructive feedback to somebody. You know, that sometimes that can be a tough thing to do. And so that's certainly a bad habit as a leader specifically, right, that I want to try and overcome. And so that's just, yeah, those are some examples. So what I want you to do is I want you to actually do this right now. Again, we're going to circle back to your paper. If you're driving or you're just listening to us while you're working, or you're, I don't know, again, running a marathon or something, I don't know. Yeah. Hopefully we're as entertaining as all that, but you know, go ahead, make sure you circle back to this and use the leader guide later, but go ahead and let's write it out. What is the one bad habit that you need to break? So, you know, what are we thinking is a bad habit that we need to break?
Are you asking me right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I would go with professionally, I would say just procrastination in general.
Okay.
I find that I will have moments where I can move forward with something, but then I'll put it off till I have to accomplish it.
I don't think you're alone in that.
Okay.
I think probably you're resonating with a lot of the audience. Okay. So now that we've identified what that bad habit is, I'm sure that you're wondering, right? Now, how do I actually stop doing this? How do I actually stop procrastinating? Well, what's really interesting is that every time you act out this bad habit, right, there's actually, it's something called a habit loop. Okay. So I want you to kind of imagine this circle, this, not our compass, but different, right? So we've got this habit loop, this circle, and that habit loop is what's actually creating this ongoing bad habit. And in every bad habit loop, there's actually a trigger, okay? And that trigger is what's causing you to do the wrong action. And that's what eventually leads, again, to this reward, right? So when you have this habit loop, there's a trigger, and then you do the wrong action, and then in some way you are receiving some sort of reward for that bad habit, right? So as an example, in procrastination, the reward is not having to do the thing, avoiding the difficult conversation. You're being rewarded, right, by not having to face whatever that uncomfortable situation is. But there's actually a couple of ways that we can start to break up that bad habit loop. And the first one is by actually removing the trigger, right? So removing the trigger, identifying whatever the wrong and the bad habit is, and making it more difficult by taking action ahead of time. Okay. So I can't take credit for this quote. I don't know who said it, but I've heard it, and I just want to put it on my wall because it means so much to me. Okay. So it is this. It says, choose wisdom ahead of time over willpower in the moment.
That's beautiful.
Choose wisdom ahead of time over willpower in the moment. I think that is just like every parent should write that down and like maybe tattoo it on their kid's arm or something. Right? So we're going to choose wisdom ahead of time. We're not going to rely on willpower in the moment. We're going to pre-decide how you're going to respond in certain situations. Okay. So as an example, for those of you who know me, you know, or you've ever been out to dinner with me or lunch with me or really any food occasion with me, you're probably going to know what I'm going to order. And that is because at some point I stopped wanting to have to make the decision and I've already pre-decided. I've pre-decided what it is that I'm going to choose, right? Because I identify as a healthy person. I don't want to have to sit there and fight with myself internally, like, should I make this choice? Should I make that choice? No, I've pre-decided and I've chosen wisdom ahead of time in sort of what kinds of foods I'm going to eat, versus willpower and having to make that decision. Like, do I want the fries? Should I get the fries? I don't know about the fries. Like, I don't have to make that decision because I've already chosen. So it's just an example, right? From a, health perspective, but there are tons of examples of pre-deciding how you're going to respond to gossip in the workplace, or how you're going to just, how you're going to respond to, I don't know, a guest, right? That's acting in a certain way, or an associate that's acting in a certain way. Those are, these are just ways that you can sort of pre-decide. So just thinking about that, Richard, what are some of the triggers, right, that you can sort of start to recognize in yourself, that you can sort of start to pre-decide how are you going to respond, or how are you going to remove that trigger in that moment?
The triggers that cause the loops.
Yes,
All
correct.
right. I labeled my loop on my.
Oh, look at you.
So I don't know if I would just be able to come up with these on the fly, but you told me about these before.
Yes, I have.
So I do pay attention, and I'm pretty sure I'll remember all 5.
Okay.
You said 5, right?
There are 5.
All right. Place.
This is a quiz.
Place.
Place is 1.
Place is number 1. And that is certain locations are going to be more likely to trigger that. I mean, you mentioned obviously going to the restaurant is an opportunity where you may be inclined to make a bad decision.
Yep.
But if you focus ahead of time, you'll be able to avoid it or prepare for the trigger. But we know that if you're a snacker, and you love to overeat or just indulge at times, you're not going to do that at the gym.
Right.
Because you'll be busy doing other things.
Correct.
And versus, like I was hanging out at my house and I keep opening that little pantry where I keep all my snacks.
Yep.
Maybe not so much.
Yep. That would be a place that you might get into some trouble.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Second trigger is time.
Yep.
So time is if I know that there are certain times of the day that I might be triggered. For example, if I'm a little more if I'm a little less patient at night, right? And maybe I'm tired at the end of the day, that may not be a time to have an important conversation.
Yes.
Or if at the end of the day at work, I'm trying to leave at a certain time every day, that may be a good time to have a difficult conversation with somebody.
Yep.
Because I'll make it be rushed. And then therefore, when I'm rushed, I may do it poorly.
Good point.
Thank you. Place, time, mood.
Yes, definitely a trigger.
So mood can, if I know that there are certain points that'll alter my mood, so kind of following with the time thing, but now my mood is always, if during pre-lunch, that 11:30 to 12:30, whatever time it is that I'm typically taking my lunch, if at all, I know that I get a little hangry. And so maybe same thing is that if I can avoid scheduling meetings or having a conversation that would require more patience, that I would avoid that particular time to avoid that particular mood in that. There's 2 M's, mood and moment.
Good job.
So if there are certain moments that are opportunity to trigger this loop, for example, if each time I take a trip, obviously everything becomes really demanding in that moment.
Oh yeah.
There's even starting sometimes days before it.
Oh yeah.
But especially that night before where you're like, did I do this? Did I pack?
Yeah.
Did I put all this stuff in together? The stuff that I couldn't do ahead of time. So it becomes very stressful moment that I want to make sure that at that time, that would be also an opportunity to fall into some bad habits. Or just the moment of the trip itself, maybe like I lose all of my work that I've done on it because my routine has been altered. So that
Yeah.
moment would cause me to break routine, break my bad habits, or I mean, start my bad habits again, or breaking the good habits that I've built.
Oh yeah.
And then place, time, mood, moment, and people.
People.
Yes, people is probably my favorite one because I feel like people can be triggering.
Oh, people can be triggering. We are in hospitality, as it were.
So I think both positively and negatively, people are going to influence our habits.
Yes.
And that not that I need to shed some friends or anything, but if I am focused on good habits from friends when I'm trying to sustain that, or if I'm looking for just the general support of my friends, that I know who to seek out and whatever that behavior be. And if I'm looking to be more athletic, then I want to go to the gym. Maybe I don't just depend on just the time of going to the gym every day, but I find somebody to do it with. So then not only can I just emulate that behavior of that person, but it also, we hold each other accountable. Therefore, we work harder at it. That's a good one.
I was as you were talking about that, I was thinking about no, not me personally, but I would say that some people might say like their mother-in-law might be a trigger. Right? There are certain people that trigger certain feelings inside of you, right? So I can definitely see how people can be a trigger. And so those are great. So those are great ways to talk about the trigger inside of that habit loop. So the next thing that we want to do when it comes to breaking that bad habit loop is we want to interrupt the action. We want to interrupt the action. So if you want to break a bad habit loop, we need to identify the trigger, and then we need to interrupt the action.
Let me interrupt you.
Okay.
I think I got it, right?
Okay.
So, and then tell me if I'm wrong, of course.
I'll tell you.
So if there's
I think you got it.
There's a time that I have a bad habit like procrastination, or we talked about the snooze button, right? Being one. And so that if I'm trying to interrupt that action of that easy snooze, then maybe I place my phone way on the other side of the room, right? So that I can't just wake up and be like, snooze, because the hardest part is getting out of the bed. Instead, I place it all the way on the other side of the room, and then I will be able to then have to get up, move all the way over to come all the way, and then I'd have to walk all the way back to my bed if I was going to snooze it at that point. But at that point, I'm already up. And you notice how I just got my habit of getting some exercise in?
So for those of you who are joining us in the audio only version, Richard is getting his steps in as we record this podcast. So
multitask.
Smart.
Thank you.
How else can we interrupt the action?
So if I know that when I go on Amazon to purchase something, because I buy everything on Amazon now.
Of course.
That when I go to buy something that I want, they always do these lovely suggestions of maybe you should get this, maybe you should get this.
Sure.
You bought that, and then I find that my $20 purchase becomes a $300 purchase real quick.
Yes.
And if I know that's a problem for me, which of course it isn't, I may then rely on somebody else to do that purchase for me, right? So I may just find the item and then send a little text message to my wife to place the order for me, so I don't make that mistake.
Click to buy. Dangerous.
Yes. Yeah, you don't even
just click to buy.
Or if I find myself constantly being distracted again by my phone, that I would just maybe just remove the apps, or at least turn off the notifications, so that while I'm sitting in here talking to you and you guys, that I wouldn't have to keep looking at my phone to be like, what was that little buzz right there? When it's probably nothing important.
Right. It's definitely nothing important. So as we start to wrap up, I want to circle back to this original question, right? Why does this matter? Why does this matter so much? Well, who you are when no one's looking directly impacts how you lead in front of other people. And the habits that you have today will shape who you become tomorrow. So I want you to ask yourself these questions. Do you like the direction that your habits are taking you? Do you like the direction your habits are taking you? If you were to stay on this current trajectory, would you have any regrets about these habits, right?
Yeah. I mean, are you asking me?
I am asking you.
I mean,
I know that's a pretty deep philosophical question, but it's honest, like we're talking about the self-reflection. So how important is that?
yeah, it probably would be. And then I would also say that those are more likely to, I would think to myself, would I have wanted to spend more time in developing myself? Would I want to spend more time at the end of the day, or really at the end of our lives, right? Did I focus enough time on my friendships, or did I let it fall behind?
Yeah.
Or, I really think that, every so often when I'm just feeling really sluggish or not having the energy to accomplish what I want, I probably would say, I probably could have been healthier all week or
Yeah.
all month or all year, and
Yeah.
not just worrying about it when I'm not liking what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So again, these are just very important questions, and these are the types of questions that you really want to start with, because it's going to prompt you to start thinking about those leadership I am statements, really starting to putting it out there into space, or putting it out there that, you really, you are this type of person, and starting to build these habits that really start to create and reflect the type of person that you have decided, right, that you are, and that you're really trying to become. And so I want you to remember, I'm going to bring him up again. My boy, James Clear. He teaches again that when you begin to practice the right habits and you start to stop the bad ones, you're actually collecting more and more evidence, right? That you are the leader that you want to become. We want to keep collecting more and more evidence by creating these good and positive habits that really stick. And so I really want to encourage us, right, to come on and let's define who it is that we want to be, right? Let's create those leadership I am statements. Let's break some of those bad leadership habits, right, by interrupting those habit loops and really thinking about that, right? Let's create some good habits that stick, that are sustainable, that lead to sustainable performance and sustainable influence. And let's learn to lead ourselves well, so that we can show up for our families and in our communities, and obviously here at LTD. And let's continue to look for ways to make an impact here on our organization, and of course in the lives of the people that we serve.
Yeah, really the easiest way for me to understand all this is purely just, I've always looked at success as accomplishing the goal.
Yeah.
And so if I set that finish line as the only way I win or lose in it, then that's the only way to do it. And really what you've spelled out to me is that's too long of a process that'll probably fail before I get there.
Yes.
But if I set what I control, because the goal is the result of what I control. But if I celebrate my own successes of what I control, the idea of, if I want to stop procrastinating, that's the end goal. But even if my simple step is waking up in the morning and not hitting the snooze, so that I have not used the snooze for the last 5 days straight, I can celebrate my milestones along the way of what I've controlled.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And so we just really hope, right, that this episode added value to you. We really hope and want to encourage you to please go back, download the Leader Resource Guide. I know that a lot of you, as you've been listening, maybe you haven't had a chance to really go through and really reflect on some of the, the prompts, the questions, but I really want to encourage you to do that. And don't just do it alone. Do it with your team, come together and do it as a group, so that you can take this information and really apply it, because we really want this to be something that's practical and that's tactical for you, obviously in the hotel, but like we say every time, both in the hotel and in the home, because you as a person, the whole person, you're equally important in both areas. So we just really want to encourage you guys to do that. We also want to encourage you guys to, of course, like and subscribe. I'm gonna keep saying it. I'm gonna put it in my email signature, like and subscribe. Share this content with other people. Don't leave it, don't just hold it in for yourself, but make sure you're sharing it with others. We think that if this added value to you, then I'm sure that it could add value to others.
Yeah.
We want you to join us back here on the episode on the 15th. So on the 15th of the month, like Richard said, we have a super special guest that's going to be joining us for a really authentic and engaging conversation about how that person is using self-leadership and how that person's journey of developing self-discipline and leadership, and how that person has used self-leadership to really start to make an impact in his leadership. And I said his again, so I'm starting to give a clue. Right. And so, yeah, I think that's it. Right. So let's take what we've learned here and let's lean in and get better together.